Hi, everyone. All right, we're here today with another episode of Mind Freedom's Breaking Barriers. We're on episode 2, and we have a very special guest that I'm really excited to talk about today on how she broke many barriers. And when I met this person many years ago, we worked together for a period of time. We did several presentations and projects together and became friends. And everything I saw in her was perfection and how she could not get anything wrong. I truly believed my perception of you was she can't do anything wrong. I mean, everything she does is got the magic touch, it's got the golden touch, it's just everything about her was perfect. So as we get to know each other, you find that, everybody has barriers. So let me give you a little background on Afua. I had to write it all down because I didn't want to miss anything. But she is a Ghanaian expat who came to Canada with her family when she was 5 years old. Being the eldest of 4 children, she and her siblings grew up in rural New Brunswick, where they learned to thrive even though they were members of the only visible minority family within 150 kilometers. That's a huge radius. That's a lot of land and geography to be the only family of minority. And today, Montreal, again, is her home, and she's completed several degrees in the fields of chemical engineering and pharmacology from McGill University. Following a brief career as a pharmaceutical engineer, she has now made her own mark in the leadership development space. And you're in for a treat because she is phenomenal. When you hear her talk and you start to follow her, you will see your whole life transform. You just have such a great background, Afia. I'm sorry, I get so excited talking about you. So through coaching all independent entrepreneurs, mentoring minority engineering students, and inspiring those around her to stand for what is their identity and truth. And that's so important. She is also a speaker of simple wisdom, a mother of 2 boys, a wife, and a lover of travel. She believes that drawing upon her unconventional journey has allowed her to empower others to live an authentic life. So please help me welcome Afia. Afia, I'm so happy you're here. We've been waiting for this for such a long time. You don't know this, but I said when I'm going to do this podcast about a year and a half ago, I said Afia is going to be one of my guests. So I think I might have mentioned it in a laughing, like, oh, I'm going to do a podcast one day and you're going to be a guest. So welcome, Afia.
Thank you so much, Heidi. I am so honored to be here. I'm so honored to see you and be part of your wider audience. And thank you so much for really thinking of me, for welcoming me with such an amazing introduction. And I can't wait. I can't wait to get into the deets because that's what I'm all about. I am about getting real and raw.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get raw today because you and I have had many raw conversations on all kinds of subjects and topics and world issues and just everything in between. And we've gotten very raw. I mean, I've hung up with you and you put me in a spell of thought process of how can I make things better or how can I break this barrier. So it's very powerful, our conversations. And so, with your background and with people like myself, I'm sure I'm not the only one that look at you and say, she's perfection, everything you do, how you dress, how you walk, everything about you. How can you share with our audience some of the barriers that you've come across? I mean, even just in your intro, I can pull out several barriers that I'd love for you to share about with our audience so they can understand how you were faced with those barriers and how you overcame them.
Right. So first, I'd like to start with who I am. And I think that that's very important, Heidi, and separating that from my circumstances. Because when we ask people who they are, they typically talk about what they do for a career. They talk about their station or situation in life, as in I am a mother or I am a husband or I am an uncle. Or they talk about who they are in terms of maybe their nation or what part of group that they belong to.
Yes.
For me, those are all things that are outside of who you are as a person, because who you are as a person follows you everywhere. And a lot of those other circumstantial things can change with time. Who you are at your core still comes with you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those things, and this comes from our culture, you know, when babies are born and we go through what we call a naming ceremony or an outdooring ceremony, it is the first time we present a child to the family and to the community and share the name of that child. Now, I know that might seem odd because today people probably pick their, you know, a lot of people pick the names of their children even before they're born. And so maybe people would already know, but in our culture, it's not traditionally done that way. And so the baby is announced, and usually the parents speak over that child to introduce them as an individual coming into this community.
Yes.
So you'll hear the baby's name, but you'll also hear who they are. And and then your parents will tell you this story multiple times throughout your life, okay? And sometimes it's often in a situation of reprimand or punishment where you're doing something that they're completely not in agreement with, and then they're gonna remind you who you are because that's who they presented you as.
Yes.
So one of the challenges I had growing up is I was constantly challenging and pushing against the authority of my parents. And then sometimes to get away out of situations, you know, maybe I would stretch the truth a bit, flat out lie or hide things. And my father would always remind me, when you were born, I said, this is Afua, my daughter. When she says yes, it is yes. When she says no, it is no. You cannot say otherwise. So it puts you in this situation where you think, oh my gosh, if this is my identity, I can't be somebody who's not truthful. I can't be someone who's not transparent. So I say that, Heidi, because when you have that, I would say that programming or that, that programming in you as a child, growing through multiple different obstacles, I always went back to, who am I? I have to stay true to my word. I have to stay true to myself. I have to stay true to my values, and I have to follow through. And that at the base is how I approach every single obstacle. You had mentioned earlier in introducing me, my background when it comes to, you know, my formal education and my career. These were all things that were very, very important to my parents, being, you know, first generation Canadians. For them, setting up their children in career paths that were supposed to be guaranteed successes, you know, they wanted to make sure that whatever their children did, that they would never lack for anything, they would never be dependent on anyone, and that they would always find employment. That was their mindset, because they had to work very hard to do that. My father was a university professor. You know, when he was in Ghana, and he had done the same thing in Kenya when we lived there at the time. My mother was a teacher, and coming to Canada, they had to start all over. Wow. In fact, one of the first barriers that I saw, and this was as a child, was I saw my father coming to a country as a university professor with a PhD from both African countries and European countries, and told that he was overqualified to be a professor to teach at university.
Wow, that's powerful.
And that was the excuse back in the day of, you know, I mean, today people say you're not a cultural fit, or they will make up something else. But that was the excuse back in the day for making sure that people who looked like him did not integrate their ranks. And so he had to make major adjustments and pivot. He was still, you know, fortunate for him, that's a whole nother story, but was still able to practice in his field, but not in the way that he had done prior. So he had to reinvent who he was in terms of his career identity because of this move that he had made for himself and his family. And so seeing that and seeing the struggles and the obstacles that came with it and how he dealt with that is how I have always approached obstacles in life. The first thing is I understood that I am not my circumstances.
Yeah.
I am not my circumstances. I am not my gender. I am not my color. I am not my report card. I am not my job. I am not my house.
Yeah.
I am me. And so when you remove yourself from that, you start to look at obstacles as not something that are a part of you, but something that are outside of you that you can work through and overcome.
powerful, Afia. That's powerful. You know, you mentioned a couple of things with your dad and basically having to start from scratch after having such a, you know, such a strong background and impressive resume, you know, of education and career, and to come to start all over again. That is a barrier that impacted your life greatly, as you can see. I mean, that is just incredibly powerful. The other thing, too, that you mentioned about the naming ceremony and remembering who you are, that's really important. We don't do that here in the US on a whole that I know of. It's basically the cute name, the funny name, the name that was a grandparent. You may be named after someone that maybe lived a terrible life, but because, you know, you want that name to stay in the family. For having a naming ceremony, you were taught as a baby who you were, and you were reminded through your entire life, so you could never ever get away from who you really are, you know, even no matter what circumstances came your way. I absolutely love that. It's so powerful, so powerful. So tell us, Afia, from that point, right, so your father came to the country, he started his life all over. As you were growing up and evolving, tell us more like about that, the impact that, you know, he had, and that barrier he had on your life, and how you were able to use that to your advantage going through your education and just through your basic life. Being in a 150-mile radius, being the only minority family must have been very challenging in many ways for different reasons. So tell us more about that.
Yeah. And it was, and you know, I do have to give some major respect to both my parents, both my mother and my father, who had to navigate this with young children, no family around, and nobody who looked like them. And we grew up, listen, not only did we come to Canada, where that's a whole, you know, cultural shift, if you will, and a life change that a lot of people do not go through. But we also ended up in a very small farming village that was, like I mentioned, not diverse at all.
Yeah.
And so it was very different from the urban city life that they had come from, major metropolis areas, to different country, different environment, small town village, okay? And there were a lot of things that I think that happened growing up that have impacted how I present myself. You talked about how, oh, I thought you were perfect.
Yeah.
Well, when you're in an environment like that, where you're the only one, where people have a preconceived notion of who you are because they grew up either watching news about what Black people are supposed to be, whether it be from celebrities or from, you know, news media channels, or, you know, they saw all of those World Vision commercials in between their TV shows, you quickly realize that you are no longer just you. You actually represent every single person on the planet who looks like you.
Yes.
And so when you're in that situation, and you're also in a situation where your parents are working very hard to reestablish the level of life that they had come from, you grow up acutely being aware that there's no room for error. That was in the back of my mind all the time growing up. So how did that translate? It translated into having excellence in everything that I did. Yeah. Academically, athletically, musically, whatever it is that we did, you had to not only give your best, you had to be the best. Because I didn't have the benefit of the doubt of just being Afia and being okay with Afia is good at some things, Afia is not good at some other things, and that is just applicable to her. It's not applicable to every single Black person on the planet. Right. And so you grow up constantly striving to represent and carry the identity of a whole group of people. Of course, that leads to working hard. That leads to being very good at always taking an extra step. Not just completing things, but completing them with excellence, but also completing them to the point where there is no room for question or doubt. I had a lot of those growing up, where people would even doubt that you were able to do that. people would question, how did she accomplish that? Did she cheat? Did she get help from her parents? I don't believe that someone who looks like her can be that intelligent. I don't believe that people who come from her background can outperform someone from my background.
Yeah.
So there was always this, it's not just a desire, Heidi, it was a need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that I am who I am and I did what I did.
And that's a lot of pressure, Afua, especially coming up as a young girl, being the eldest of your siblings. That's a lot of pressure for you to carry at that age, coming to a new country, coming to a totally different environment, trying to understand, I'm sure when you came here, you didn't feel different in Ghana. You come here, all of a sudden you feel different. You're learning a whole new culture. You're learning a different way to live, and you have this pressure on your back. And a lot of people do not realize that you know certain challenges for people of color do not happen with other groups and populations like myself. So having that level of excellence also is a heavy pressure. It's a huge, I don't want to call it a burden, but in a sense, it is a burden to carry because you're always hyper aware of how you look, how you talk, how you dress, what you're doing. And that's a huge barrier to overcome. Someone like me, I did not have to do that in life. I mean, I had to, just live, I mean, it's one of those things that you and I have talked about this many times, that I want our audience to understand that there's so many barriers that people have to go through, but there are barriers that certain people just being born into this world have to go through that others do not have to have that challenge. So
Exactly.
so tell us more, Afua, about, as you were evolving in life, and at what point did you move to Montreal, and you ended up in college and all of that? How did all of that evolve?
Exactly. So my parents and my family being who they are, I did excel very, academically in school. Got top marks not only in my school, but top marks in the country for, at that stage. And so I had the opportunity to study pretty much anywhere that I wanted to go, in Canada and also in the US. I took a full scholarship to McGill University to study chemical engineering because I had a choice between that and becoming a doctor, and I can't stand blood, so I thought I'd make a pretty horrible doctor. So that was it. I was like, okay, I only have two choices in life. You can be a doctor or an engineer. So that's what I did. And obviously, when you're doing something, when you make choices out of fear or out of obligation, or external factors that have nothing to do with who you are, it's normal that it's probably not going to turn out the way that you would like. So did I do well in school? Of course I had to, right? It's what comes back to, I have no choice because I'm constantly being scrutinized because of how I look and who I am. So I have no choice but to pull through. And I've grown up in this environment where no matter the obstacle, we still push through. We still get through this. We still overcome. And then I was getting to the end of my studies, looking at all of my colleagues, where they were going, going to career fairs, seeing who was being selected for those coveted first jobs. And I realized then and there that I still have this position where, in order for me to be able to stand out, but not stand out in the negative way, as in this is the token person of color that we don't want on our team, but stand out in a way where being put beside other classmates or candidates, there would be no question who should be chosen.
Yeah.
And so I strategically chose a career path. I decided I was going to go into the pharmaceutical world. I did for a number of reasons. And one of those reasons was because no one else had done it before. No one else in my university at that time, and maybe even still to this day, had combined a chemical engineering degree with a pharmacology degree. And I set my sights on working in this industry thinking, okay, if I have those two, and you put me beside any one of my classmates or people who have graduated, they cannot help but to select me. And I had to beg the dean of one department, take extra courses, prolong my my studies. So I spent 6 years in university to finish these programs to be able to say that I am the only one who has this. So companies come and hire me. And it honestly, Heidi, it worked. It worked. But guess what? I was still in a career that was not my passion.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, I accomplished it, but I'm still not happy as I would like to be in my career. And so I worked in that. I got to discover very randomly the world of direct selling while I was working.
Yeah.
And actually, at that time, I was doing my master's program research. I was finishing my degree. Through that, I was working, and then I decided to start a home-based business in direct selling. And that is where I discovered my love for people, my love for leading, my love for developing, and even sales. You know, I know people always talk about sales as if it's like the worst thing you could do, and you know, these people are sleazy, or you know, I've heard so many people say, "Oh, I'm not a salesperson," when they really are a salesperson.
Right.
What I discovered is I do love sales, because I do love the opportunity to be able to vividly and intently listen to someone's need and to be able to offer a solution to that need. For me, that's what sales is I can listen and understand your pain. I can listen and understand the opportunity. I can listen and realize that there is a way for you to overcome. And I happen to have that solution. So I loved it. I loved it. And from there, I developed in that industry. In the meantime, I also decided to venture on some entrepreneurial journeys. I had a business that I had started with a couple of friends of mine that was in the HR IT space. So we were in the process of building and developing a human resources platform that was based on social interactions within the workforce, that was funded by VCs. Then our funding got cut. Then we closed down the company. I mean, so many things happened between then and now. And in that process too, because of the way that I built my business and because of the way that I understood that in order for me to progress in life, and I'll be honest with you, this is where one of those obstacles came to be. As I was building my team in the direct selling industry, Heidi, one of the things that I realized very quickly, because I started to travel throughout, not just in Montreal, but in my province of Quebec. And what I started to realize that people were not so happy to see a salesperson who did not look like them to trying to offer them a solution. And someone actually told me one day, point blank, this woman said to me, and I was selling cosmetics at the time. This woman said to me, "You know what? I don't know why you had," and this was in a town, let's say 3 hours outside of the city. "I don't know why you had to come all the way from Montreal to sell me lipstick. There must be someone who looks like me who can sell me lipstick here." And
you know how I feel about all this, Afia.
I know you know, and you know how I feel about this. But yeah. Heidi, here's the deal. It was an obstacle. It was an obstacle. It was not me. I'm not a bad person. I'm not the one that she hates because she doesn't know me. Right. She hates the idea of me in her mind.
Right.
It's not me. And so I thought, okay, if I'm going to overcome this, I can't change me. You know what? If she didn't like my skirt, I might have shown up with pants the next week.
Right.
But I can't change this.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I decided, you know what, I am going to find people who have no problem with who I am, but I'm going to use them as my ambassadors or representatives of my team and show them how to build. And that's where my team took off. I'm going to show people how to do what I do so that they can represent in their community. Yeah. And that's how I grew.
Incredible.
And that is also how I built a name for myself in the industry, to then move into the corporate side, where I was headhunted into an organization where I continued to do the same thing. I showed people how to do what I do. Yeah. And you know, Heidi, as a leader or as a mentor or anyone who's coaching and sponsoring people along their journey, the most convincing and the most effective coaches are the people who've been through what you've been through. You know, I was at a point in my career at that point where there's nothing anybody could have told me in terms of an obstacle or an objection that I hadn't already lived through.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So in a way, I know people look at obstacles sometimes as a burden. They can be.
Yeah.
At the same time, man, is it the best training that you will ever get? Because no one could stand up to me and say anything that would faze me. Whereas someone else, maybe who, if you had been given your success or if you had walked into success, they did not have the same conviction. They did not have the same credibility when it came to building a team.
No. And that's where your success came from, because you had that. And oftentimes obstacles become they become exciting over time, especially for someone like you and all that you've been through. You're like, oh, if I could get through A, B, and C, I can get through D, E, and F, and let's move on to G, A, and keep recycling the letters and keep going forward. And that is the most, I want to say impressive, but it's not, it's impressive, but it's more empowering than anything, for people to understand that no matter what you go through in life, regardless of whether it's environmental and how you were raised or what your conditions were, whether it's, poverty or being in a family that is wealthy, but they don't pay, no matter what it is,
Yes,
you can overcome any obstacle, any barrier, any challenge that comes your way. But it starts with the mind. And for you, Afia, you have a very strong mindset to know that you can overcome any of these. And you've been
absolutely.
through a lot in your life, a lot of challenges, but you kept finding, we talked about this the other day, you kept finding, new pathways, right? Like in the brain, if you have a blockage in your brain, your blood is going to find a new pathway to make its way around, right? So it will start to build up and build up, but for you just keep making new pathways, and it's like unlimited, right? Because everybody's going to go through challenges in life, perhaps not like you have been through, and many people like you have been through, but for you to overcome that and to just keep moving forward, and those challenges and barriers don't end,
They
right? I mean, I'm
don't.
sure you go through them every day
They
still.
don't. Exactly. And Heidi, you nailed it. Limitless. You
Yeah.
know, that one of the things that I understood growing up, and maybe it's not always this way, but I never expected life to be easy. I think a lot of people, they give up, they stop in front of a barrier, or they simply resign to it because they expected something else. And when I'm coaching and mentoring people, what I always tell them is, when you reach an obstacle in your life, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to remember what it is that you wished for, or remember what it is that you're praying for, or what it is that is your deep desire.
Yeah.
Because those obstacles are not, in my opinion, they are not by coincidence or by chance.
Yeah.
Those obstacles are sent to you to train you and prepare you for what you have asked for.
Mhm.
If you are asking to become more patient, well, let me tell you, my friend, your patience is going to be tested,
Yes, it's
right?
true.
It's going to be tested. If you're asking for a bigger team and more responsibility, guess what? You're going to have some massive responsibilities being thrown at you that you're not going to know how to manage. If
Right.
you're asking to become, a different version of yourself, to grow in a different way, well, I'm telling you, you are going to start to question if that's even what you want at some point.
Yeah.
All of that is sent to grow you and to train you and prepare you for what you have asked. And so, once again, as much as I might not like what's happening to me, I might not appreciate the certain visions or certain people that have come into my sphere of influence, I always look at them, Heidi, as number one, they are not me. I am not my circumstances. But number two, they've been sent to me to train me.
Yes.
Right? I know people love, we are in a culture today of canceling people, calling people the enemy, being very divisive and polarizing everything that is possible.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I condone, attacks against humanity, or I condone people who are just downright mean-spirited, or I condone any type of behavior that dehumanizes. What I'm saying is, that even those people have a context that I'm not aware of.
Right.
And at the same time, those are the very same people that have allowed me to grow and be in the position I am today. And people are like, well, no, if they were trying to block you. I said, I get that. But you know what? When a bodybuilder shows up with lots of muscles, nobody says, oh, those weights were holding them down. No, they lifted those weights.
Yeah.
They lifted those weights. So as much as it was a resistance, as much as it was pulling them down, it is because of that they're jacked today.
Yeah. It's
So put those things into perspective. The other thing too, Heidi, is I always remind people to think about that one time or maybe multiple times in your past that were tough, or that you didn't think you were going to make it through, or that it was the worst situation or circumstance you could have been in. And I remind them, you're here today. You're still here. So if you could have gone through that, imagine what you can do moving forward.
absolutely.
If I could do that, imagine what I could do now. If
Yeah.
I could go through that, imagine what I can go through today. It's limitless. Like you said, it's limitless.
Oh, Afia, that's so powerful. Honestly, everything that you spoke about, and I will put those in the notes of the when I post this, excuse me, in the comment section. Everything you said is extremely powerful, extremely empowering, and this is what we're here to do. Give me 1 second. I'm shaking a cold, but this is what we're here to do, is empower others. And your background, the people that you've worked with, all you see it in your social media. I know you and I've had conversations, but you've touched so many lives with, so your berries not only just helped you, but they're helping others. And that's the point that is so important, that you've gotten through them, you've gotten through your obstacles, but you've also trained, mentored, coached, and led others through theirs just with those tips alone. And that's really important for everybody to understand. And it wasn't just people that looked like you, it was everyone that you were willing to share and share your stories with, share your support with. That's even more, but that like is the overarching of this whole story, that no matter what, you came through and you taught others how to come through as well. And I absolutely love that part of the story.
Absolutely. And thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Heidi. For me, it all comes with you're talking about mindset and mind freedom. One of the most freeing things in the world is to be able to make choices that are based on who you are and what your values are, versus making choices based on circumstances and restrictions and fear in life. It's the absolute freedom. It's the absolute freedom. And I have no issues, whether it is through my formal coaching and keynote speaking, through my job, through my mothering, my parenting, through my relationships with friends, no matter in what context, I have no issues with pouring that into other people, because Heidi, there is enough for all of us. In fact, there's more than enough for all of us. And I know that what is for me is for me.
Yeah.
Right? It's like that expression, you cannot miss your own boat.
Right.
If your boat is sitting at the dock, that's okay. It will be ready for you when you're ready to set sail. But what is for me is for me. So for me, offering what is infinitely a part of me and gifted to me for my purpose here on earth, I've got an infinite supply of that. I've got an infinite supply of that. The only time you start to feel restricted and afraid and wanting to keep things for yourself is when you are out there trying to be someone who you're not, copying someone else, feeling inadequate.
Yeah.
Well, then you're going to go into fear mode and protection mode, and let's attack other people and let's protect what I have because I might not have tomorrow. But when your supply is limitless, Heidi, you're making it rain
Yeah.
all day long, all day long. And it feels good because that is what you were meant to do. And it feels good to you.
Yeah.
And people receive that with gratitude, with not just gratitude, but with the intention behind it that comes from freely being able to give.
Oh, Afia, that's so powerful. That really is, because a lot of people forget that. And we live according to what others that came before us told us we should do or be. And we
Yes.
are not living as who we really, really are and what our purpose is here on this planet. So that's incredible. So Afia, I know we're short for time, but tell everybody
Yes.
what's next for Afia. I will put how they can reach you in there. And I also want to ask the audience, if you want to hear anything else from Afia, let me know, and maybe she'll come back for another episode at some point in 2023. So we'll see. We'll play it all by ear and see what you're doing, because I know you got a very busy schedule. So tell us what's next for you.
Wow, Heidi, what is next for me? I can tell you that first of all, I'm an avid single tasker. For those of you who don't know what that means, it means I really don't believe in multitasking. It doesn't mean I don't believe in doing multiple things in my life. I just don't believe in multitasking. So I have been working on a lot of different things, but hyper focused one at a time. And I'm excited to say that in 2023, I can't tell you exactly what yet, but there's some projects that are going to be coming to fruition. So especially the end of the year next year, you're going to see me on a major stage with some major, let's say, big celebrity names of people that you all will know in Canada for an amazing event. I'm working on that. I am working on my business in recruiting that I launched last year. So I continue to do that. And that, Heidi, is my way of having more influence and hands-on influence into diversity, equity, and inclusion in our workforce. I spent so many years being the token that at one point I decided, you know what? I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done being the one who shows up, breaks down the barriers, and then hope to bring others with me, and realize that no, the door was shut right behind me. So I thought, no, I'm going to be able to open more doors for other people through this business. And I'm so blessed to have many clients and partners who allow me to do that. I continue to do my mentoring and keynote speaking. And beyond that, all I can say, Heidi, because I honestly, I do not know the future. I do not know the future. What I can tell you is that 2023, and even, hey, maybe 2063, if yeah, is going to become more and more authentic,
Mhm.
more and more vocal and visible. And through that, I plan to raise an army of people who are so deeply connected to their identity that we will all lack for nothing, we will all fear nothing, and we will all bring our fire and just set this world on fire with the passions and the gifts we were all meant to give. That is my mission. It's my heart's desire. And I'm running. I am running. I am not walking towards it. I'm not crawling towards it. I am running full force towards it year after year.
Oh my God, you're giving me chills. And I will be the first one to enroll in your army. So you just give me that little signing sheet and I will sign my life
Yes,
away.
ma'am.
Oh, Afia, it's been so great having you. You are so powerful. I wish we could clone you into many little mini Afias, but that will maybe be part of your army. But you're so powerful. We really need to share more of you with the world. So I'm so happy that you're doing all these incredible things, and you're going to be way more visible and accessible to people in the near future. 2023 is right around the corner. So I'm so excited for that. Thank you for empowering so many people, including myself, all of these years that I've known you and the years before that. And thank you for coming on and sharing your story. It's truly a story about breaking barriers. And listen, everybody out there, you have not seen Afia for the last time. You will see Afia again in many other ways through all of her other projects and things she's doing. But if you want her back here, let us know in the chat, and I'll beg her next year to come back.
Wonderful. Thank you, Heidi. It's my pleasure. And thank you for always being there for me. Honestly, you are one of the people who have always supported me, pushed me, and propelled me forward, and been an ally, true and true and true. You know, your actions have always followed your words, and I respect that. And I completely do not take that for granted. So thank you for being who you are.
Thank you, Afia. That means a lot coming from you. It does. And we're on the same page on a lot of things. So thank you again. And everyone have a wonderful day. And you'll be seeing Afia again. Yay, Afia. I'll put your contact info in below too. All right, thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.